Welcome to First Parish, Unitarian Universalist of Canton, a Neponset River UU community. My name is John Donovan, and I'll be your worship associate this morning. I'm joined this morning by our lead minister, the Reverend Dr. Michelle Walsh. Also, we have our community minister, the Reverend Dr. Clyde Grubbs. And we have a very special guest with us today, the Reverend Mary Margaret Earl. And the Reverend Mary Margaret Earl has served as the Executive Director and Senior Minister of the Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministry for 10 years. In this ministry, she works for racial justice and to strengthen connections between UUs and the Roxbury neighborhood, where the UUUM operates. She served on the leadership team of the Moral Movement Massachusetts, the Roxbury Cultural Network, and the search committee for the Roxbury Community College president. Prior to her arrival at the UU Urban Ministry, she spent 10 years at a faith-based nonprofit in Rhode Island serving the homeless community. She's the past president of the board of Rhode Island Coalition for the Homeless, recipient of the Heroes of Faith Award from the Rhode Island State Council of Churches for her interfaith work. And she also has received a Courage of Conscience Award from the Peace Abbey in Sherborne, Mass. She's a longtime vegan committed to standing up for non-human animals. So, welcome. Our community honors diversity and joyfully welcomes all who share the values and principles of our congregation. To all of you present, you're welcome here, whether you're a longtime member, friend, or first-time visitor. And you're welcome here in all of your identities, experiences, beliefs, and relationships, including if you need to wiggle, fidget, walk around, or even dance during songs. We also acknowledge that the building of our congregation resides on the land named as Ponkapog by Indigenous peoples. We invite you to read our fuller land and labor acknowledgement on the interior page of your order of service. We're very glad that all of you have come to worship with us today.
So I also want to extend my warmest welcome to my very dear colleague, the Reverend Mary Margaret Earl, and I'll say a few words about the UU Urban Ministry later during the offering because they are our Faith in Action partner this month.
I invite us into the spirit of presence and worship. I read that the insect kingdom is collapsing, that the dense eastern woods have been beaten back and defeated. The lawn's endless seas of lawn are sprayed and pressed into obedience, all real buzzing, bursting, impertinent life stilled into a stretch of green carpet. The bulldozers clear the trees and fill in the ponds, and the frogs fall silent. Lights along the highway, lights in backyards, lights everywhere, blind nighttime scavengers, confuse migrating birds. The moths seek the moon and exhaust themselves at street lamps. Fireflies flicker out. I read that the living world is flickering out. And so I rise in the morning, I fill the bird bath with fresh water. I rise in the morning and take a slender shovel and make space for a handful of goldenrod. I let the milkweed grow and open and surprise me with her purple flowers, her glorious blossoms, when once I did not even know that milkweed eventually blooms if you let her. Yesterday, I watched a swallowtail butterfly dance on the bee balm. There is no way to describe it except as a dance of joy. I read that maybe the world will collapse. I rise in the morning, and like the leaf that curves at the edge from despair into song, I plant something, a handful of goldenrod. I do sing. This is how I save myself. This is how we save ourselves. We sing, we plant something, we love something. We rise in the morning and begin again.
Direct you to your order of service now for our unison chalice lighting. We light this chalice honoring the warmth of community and the beacon of relationships.
And before we read our covenant together, our shared covenant together, we're going to honor Pride Month by lighting our Pride candle. And I'd like you to repeat after me as John lights the Pride candle. We light this candle in honor of Pride Month.
We light this candle in honor of Pride Month.
And as a proud symbol of ourselves as Unitarian Universalist Jedis. Jedis, great. Those who vow to protect, justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, and who celebrate with joy and pride all of the embodied diversity represented by Pride Month. Blessed be.
And what a wonderful dovetail into our covenant. Please join me. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace with respect and understanding, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve our fellows and humankind, to the end that all souls shall grow together in harmony. Thus do we covenant with each other and with our God by whatsoever name we worship. Please rise and body your spirit for our opening hymn, number 21, a UU classic, For the Beauty of the Earth, number 21.
Our reading this morning includes excerpts from the book The Sum of Us, S-U-M, The Sum of Us, What Racism Costs Everyone and How We Can Prosper Together by Heather McGee. The American landscape was once graced with resplendent swimming pools, some big enough to hold thousands of swimmers at a time. In the 1920s, towns and cities tried to outdo one another by building the most elaborate pools. In the 1930s, the Works Progress Administration put people to work building hundreds more. By World War II, the country's 2,000 pools were glittering symbols of a new commitment by local officials to the quality of life for their residents, allowing tens of thousands of people to socialize together for free. By the 1950s, the fight to integrate America's prized public swimming pools would demonstrate the limits of white commitment to public goods. In Montgomery, Alabama, the Oak Park Pool was the grandest one for miles, the crown jewel of the Parks Department that also included a zoo, a community center, and a dozen other public parks. Dorothy Moore was a white teenage lifeguard when a federal court deemed the town's segregated recreation unconstitutional. Suddenly, Black children would be able to wade into the deep end with white children at the Oak Park Pool. At the rec center, Black elders would get chairs at the card table. The reaction of City Council was swift. Effective January 1st, 1959, the Parks Department would be no more. The council decided to drain the pool rather than share it with their Black neighbors. Of course, the decision meant that white families lost a public resource as well. It was miserable, Mrs. Moore told a reporter 5 decades later. Uncomprehending white children cried as the city contractors poured dirt in the pool, paved it over, and seeded it with grass that was green by the time summer came along again. To defy desegregation, Montgomery would go on to close every single public park and padlock the doors of the community center. It even sold off the animals in the zoo. The entire public park system would stay closed for over a decade. Even after it reopened, they never rebuilt the pool. Today, we don't even notice the absence of the grand pools in our communities. Where grass grows over former sites, there are no plaques to tell the story of how racism drained the pool. But the spirit that drained these public goods lives on. The impulse now manifests in a subtler fashion, more often in a pool of public resources than a literal one. So ends our reading.
This is the time in our service when we lift up the generosity of all of you, members and friends and visitors. Your pledges and gifts keep our doors open and our programs vibrant. If you're visiting us for the first time, we invite you to make a donation or to let the offering plate pass you by and consider yourself our guest, though we do hope you return and consider deepening your relationship with us. And as a reminder, our Faith in Action collection this month is for... Oh, and Michelle's...
I'm here to say.
And Michelle is going to say.
All good, all good. Okay, so again, the Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministry, who is represented by our lovely guest speaker. As you may recall, I worked for the UU Urban Ministry, ran a lay-led youth program for about 18 years. I know the Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministry well. This is a shorter month for us. I am going to encourage you to give very deeply and generously today and next Sunday for our Faith in Action. The Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministry is the oldest, I believe the oldest, right? Urban ministry, official.
Nonprofit? It's one of the oldest in the country.
One of the oldest ones, yeah, and it's very, very important presence in the Roxbury community and has been significant in combating violence, providing equity, and providing a lot of programming, particularly over the summer. So your generous giving can help support summer programming for the youth there and for outreach to our broader Unitarian Universalist community. And let's join together for a short, brief time of meditation and prayer. Just find your center, relax your body, bring your attention to the breath. shrug your shoulders up, drop them down, roll your neck. Just allow the muscles of your face to soften and relax as we invite the bell to sound 3 times and then sit quietly together. And then we'll invite the bell to sound and have a moment of prayer. God of many names and no names, many genders and no gender, and whom we know as this precious and mysterious and powerful Spirit of life and love that moves in us and among us and out into the larger world, testifying that love is always greater. Love is always greater than any challenges that we may face. We are grateful for all the good works of this congregation, particularly over this past year as we begin to move towards the close of this congregational year, but not the close of our work. We look forward to the summer, to the many ways in which we will still be together and caring for one another and engaging in activities together and traveling and having fun, even amidst everything that is going on. We know that we are stronger together and that this love that we have for one another holds us by a larger force, a larger power. And we are held tenderly by each other in its care, as is the world. Amidst all the pain, let us draw deeply from that well in an ongoing way for sustenance in these times. Blessed be. Amen.
It is good to return to Canton again, and it is good to see my colleagues, Reverend Dr. Clyde Grubbs and Reverend Dr. Michelle Walsh. And as Reverend Michelle mentioned, she served at the urban ministry before my time, but for many years and left a lasting legacy there. And I think it is very fortunate for Canton that you have 2 very well-known social justice warriors at a time when we need to see and remember how to be warriors. Canton is one of 46 congregations around Greater Boston that are connected to the work of the UU Urban Ministry as our members, and the Urban Ministry was founded 200 years ago by a Unitarian minister who was striving for social justice in Boston with the combined power of Unitarian congregations. And congregations like this one continues to play an important role in our work to dismantle racism and to advance racial, social, and economic justice. Today, we have a youth program that serves high school students from Boston. We have a domestic violence shelter serving families who are rebuilding their lives. We have a summer employment program for students, and we partner with Roxbury businesses and nonprofits, bringing congregations and the Roxbury community together to make change. So this morning, I wanted to share with you a trip that I took last September to the Canadian Rockies as I was reflecting on 10 years of service at the Urban Ministry. And I want to thank Reverend Michelle for finding this really perfect image on the front of your order of service. It plants a seed that we'll get back to. So I'm going to have you take a look at that. And we'll get back to that image and why it's here. So in the Rockies, I hiked in this stunning landscape. Has anybody been to the Canadian Rockies? A few. It's gorgeous, right? It is beautiful. And I hiked as I looked back on what I have learned in this work at the Urban Ministry as I climbed up steep elevation, adjusting an awkward backpack, taking in views of glaciers and azure blue water. It was not easy going up. I bruised my toes coming down, but it was a wondrous trip. And I thought of how it is like the work for justice, bit by bit, sometimes hard and uncomfortable, and with unexpected gifts along the way. I looked back at arriving in Roxbury in November of 2014 when it became clear that the work before us was more than our programs. There was this core question underneath. How would we address racism in Greater Boston? We're an historically white-led organization in the heart of Boston's historic African-American community, and we're encircled by suburban white congregations reaching out to help make change. I was gripped by the challenge and the potential and how much I had to learn to get my arms around it. But before I could do that, before I could get my arms around it, I was called on to preach in pulpits like this. I brought no expertise that first season, no profound message. I brought my questions. What did it mean to be a white-led organization in Roxbury? How do we forge real relationships across difference? How do we make change that really matters? And I began simply listening, learning, and following. In these 10 years, the police officers who killed Michael Brown were not indicted, sparking the Black Lives Matter movement. We witnessed the election of 2016 and the killing of George Floyd. White people were shaken out of a collective slumber. We learned that the waters of racism in the United States go deep. And the more that I've learned, the deeper those waters go. I first learned about the health, wealth, and educational disparities that mean Black people live poorer and die sooner than white people. There is a 23-year difference in life expectancy in Roxbury and Whiteback Bay, just 1 mile away. And the waters went deeper still. I learned about the racism baked into these structures that create those statistics, the prison, healthcare, and food systems. African Americans are incarcerated at 5 times the rate of white people. Only half of African Americans have private health insurance versus 75% of white people. And 22% of Black people in the United States experience food insecurity, twice the rate of white people, figures that we are going to see increase in the days, the weeks, and the months ahead. And the deep waters grew colder. I learned how those systems are rooted in enslavement, how the police system grew out of slave patrols, how founding fathers like Thomas Jefferson were themselves enslavers whose economic well-being was secured through bondage, how after the Civil War, the prison system replaced enslavement as Blacks were charged with petty crimes and sentenced to hard labor, sometimes in the very same fields where plantations once stood. I learned we cannot disentangle modern educational, housing, and economic systems from this history. Racism isn't a fistful of solvable problems. It is foundational. And to move forward in any meaningful way on our nation's and our region's social ailments, we must face it together. I packed a book on my trip to the Rockies. It was the book that I read from earlier, The Sum of Us by Heather McGhee, a researcher. McGhee began her research after the 2016 election when many of us were asking, why did people not vote in their own self-interest? Does anybody remember asking that question? Or now? Why do people not vote in their own self-interest? She looked at the racism that showed itself in the election and in our nation's political turmoil. Her thesis is this: our country's ongoing struggle for meaningful healthcare reform, positive economic change, even investment in infrastructure like roadways, our struggle to achieve collective good despite our abundant wealth and resources can be traced to enslavement. White people, McGhee writes, have been conditioned to believe in a zero-sum equation. If people of color gain, they lose. And the stronger a person's racial resentment, the likelier to reject policies and investments that benefit all of us, including themselves. McGhee asserts that etched deeply into the white psyche is a value that is placed on whiteness. And when whites see black people in the swimming pool, they'd rather not have a pool than to be in it with them and erase the status conferred by whiteness. And it is this deep-seated disfigurement of the white psyche that billionaire titans and political tacticians lean into with racist dog whistles to keep us separated and maintain their power and control. It especially harms people of color, and that cannot be overstated, but it also doesn't serve any of us except for very few at the top. McGhee writes, racism works against non-wealthy white Americans. It lowers their support for government actions that could help them economically out of a zero-sum fear that it could help the racialized undeserving as well, end quote. She draws a through line showing how this zero-sum thinking has collapsed unions that could advocate for all workers, and it's powered disinvestment of public services like higher education. When more students of color began attending college, she writes, public funding dried up. College students of color 40 years ago were just 1 in 6. Now they're near half. Parallel to that rise came cuts to per-student funding. In the past 30 years, public college tuition has almost tripled. She posits that it's why states like Texas refuse Medicaid expansion, refusing what's basically, for them, free federal funding that would mean all rural Texans would have better access to hospitals. The refusal is fear that expanding public health care would draw in and serve more people of color. Black people suffer the most from racism, but our whole human family is harmed. Solidarity, she says, is the answer. Solidarity is the answer. McGhee quotes a longtime activist she interviewed in her research. Quote, if we didn't have these sharp divisions based on race, we could make enormous progress in terms of making sure that people are not hurting as badly as they are or deprived of what are clearly the necessities of life, end quote. And McGhee herself continues, over the years that I have sought answers to why a fair economy is elusive, it has become clear to me that how white people understand what's right and wrong about our diverse nation, who belongs and who deserves, is determining our collective course. This is the crux of it, she writes. Can we swim together in the same pool or not? It's a political question, yes, and one with economic ramifications, but at its core, it's a moral question, end quote. And it's a question for us as people of faith. I no longer believe that we can advance justice in a meaningful way in the United States without dealing with the history of enslavement and its inherited racism, not in fighting climate change or hunger. Racism cannot be separated from the rest of our social justice commitments because it is part and parcel of it. And that means that we must build connections and solidarity across race in Greater Boston. In our segregated world, that can seem daunting. But as people of faith, let us not be daunted. We are simply called to begin. We are called to do what we can in as many ways as we can for as long as we can. After 10 years at the Urban Ministry, I still bring to your pulpit no more expertise than when I began this work. But what I have is conviction that building relationships across race is foundational for all justice work. And I come with the same strategies as the year I arrived. To build real connections, those of us who are white need to listen and learn and follow. At the Urban Ministry, we listen to the community to guide us forward. In partnership with the Roxbury Historical Society, we began research into the history of enslavement by the congregation of First Church Roxbury, whose church and campus we inherited and inhabit. We published a report citing the names of 58 enslaved persons owned by First Church Roxbury congregants, with even the first minister an enslaver. And then we asked the Roxbury community members to guide us forward from there. Since then, our neighbors have charted our course, seeking to learn more about the lives of those named in the report and to track their genealogy to find if there are descendants living in Roxbury today. It might seem that the urgency would be confronting the racial injustices happening right now, and yes, that is important, but the African American community says this also matters. Historic truth-telling, making the past visible, and deeply honoring the lives of those who were dishonored by our religious ancestors. This matters urgently too. And we learn. For the past 5 years, we've held webinar lectures called Community Conversations, in which we invite BIPOC leaders to speak to challenges facing the Black community in Boston. They've spoken on gentrification, educational inequity, the wealth gap. We learn for an ever-deepening understanding of past and present. We've built a tours program that is led by local community members that highlights the history of the community that we stand in. These tours tell the story of public art in Nubian Square or about the urban tree canopy around us. Students in our after-school program design their own tours of the neighborhood, highlighting what matters most to them. And we follow. Our work in partnership has deepened. When the NAACP asked us to fill a bus to go to an action in DC, Unitarian Universalists filled the bus. As the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute addresses violence in the city, we stand behind them, inviting congregations to join the Mother's Day Walk for Peace. And when City Life Vida Urbana asks us to stuff envelopes, we stuff envelopes. We build solidarity by showing up again and again in a spirit of listening and learning. When you enter the doors of the UU Urban Ministry, you'll see on the entry wall a quote by the Aboriginal activist Lila Watson. It says, "If you are here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together." These words resonate as a spiritual truth. But there is a very concrete truth there, too, that the sum of us reminds us. The truth that until we grapple with the history of enslavement and racism and bridge our divide and commit to working in solidarity, we will not be free, not any of us, of all that ails us. We need to work together. On my last long hike in the Canadian Rockies, we climbed up Larch Valley to Sentinel Pass, steadily making a 2,500-foot elevation gain to a stunning view, and then we began our descent. And as we descended, we came upon startled hikers, warning that a grizzly bear was along the trail ahead. She was in a state of what is called hyperphagia, a trance-like focus on eating enough calories for winter. Our hike leaders reminded us of what is called for when faced with grave danger. Make noise, people, and stick together. And so we held close and began singing until we were safely through and the trail ended. That is what gets us through the hard and dangerous days ahead, friends. Let us sing loudly, reach out to the whole human family, and stick together. And may it be so, and amen. I invite you to join in singing loudly our closing hymn, number 168, One More Step.
We will take one more step till there is peace for us, and everyone will take one more step. One more word, we will say one more word till every word is heard by everyone. We say one more word, one more prayer. We will say one more prayer till every prayer is shared by everyone. We'll say one more prayer, one more song. We will sing one more song till every song is sung by everyone. We'll sing one more song.
Go out into the world confident that you have what you need to respond to the troubles around us. Go out in courage and in faith, and go forth with great hope. Blessed be.
Give Mary Margaret one more thank you. You truly are doing amazing work there. Thank you, my colleague. Pull your hymnals out to number 456 in the back of your hymnal. That's where you're extinguishing the chalice is today.
Please join me. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
And I believe